Today I'm out here on some of my favorite back roads in my hometown, Vista, California, which is in Southern California. These are the roads that I grew up on, and I figured it would be the perfect place to discuss today's topic, which is Corvettes in general and why they were off my radar for so many years as a potential car to own or even consider owning. Growing up here in Southern California, especially in the mid 90s and early 2000s, JDM Japanese car culture was the thing. That was the most popular enthusiast car to discuss, talk about specs on, talk about all the different ways you could modify it, which one was your favorite, which one looked the best, which had the best motors, which were the most reliable. It was all JDM cars out here for my childhood, basically growing up, and through most of my 20s as well. I was under the impression that Corvettes were heavy, boat-like in the handling department, extremely unreliable, and carried a reputation, like many American cars at the time, as being unreliable. Cars like Honda Civics, Acura Integras, Toyota MR2s, Subaru WRXs, Nissan 240SXs, Mitsubishi Evos, these were the cars that we all grew up wanting and dreaming of owning one day. Corvettes were completely off our radar. Our family car was a modified Honda Accord that my dad had set up by a company called Jackson Racing in Los Angeles. Some of my earliest memories were helping my dad not only maintain that car and wash it, but also changing suspension settings and handling characteristics of that car. They were really fun cars, super affordable, and you could make them your own very easily with modifications. Southern California car culture was all about Japanese cars. There was definitely pockets still of Ford Mustang, Corvette, and Camaro guys. A lot of those guys actually were Marines or in the Navy because we had so many bases around us growing up here in San Diego. And they would bring that car culture a lot of the time from the Midwest or back east and kind of influence Southern California, probably even more than native Californians did. Modifying Hondas was just so easy, and it was so easy to root for them. You would always see Honda owners slap a turbo and go and beat a Corvette or go and beat a more expensive Camaro. Even Ferraris and Lamborghinis at the time were getting beat by Hondas with turbos and very light modifications just because of how small they were. They were front wheel drive. They did great at drag races. I remember watching shows like Pink's back in the day, and you would see little Civics beating all kinds of crazy cars that way outclassed them in the power range. But as I got older, I became more and more obsessed with researching specs, lap times of all different types of cars, whether it was European cars, American cars, or Japanese cars. I really started to pay attention to what cars were winning races, what cars had the best weight to power ratio, best reliability, and so on. And that's where I started to notice Corvettes. And just in the past year, I really started looking into Corvette models, whether it was the C5 generation, C6, C7s, and even the new C8s. I started to dive into what I thought would be an awesome Corvette to own. The C5s are super affordable. You can get them for under $20,000 with low miles on them for a base model. You can get C5 Z06s for between $20,000 to $30,000 in mint condition. So that became a really cool car that I was actually considering buying. I was comparing it to the C6 base model and the C6 Z06, mainly because I liked that analog experience that I was reading about you would get in the C6 Z06 when compared to the later C7 generation and the new C8s. Now, obviously, I'm driving a C6 Z06. I ended up getting a C6 Z06, and I could not be happier. So I guess the whole point of this story here is I was not always a Corvette fan. I didn't grow up loving every Corvette that came out in every generation and hoping to own one or seeking to own one at some point in my life. It kind of just happened through research. And you cannot deny that if you look at lap times at most track days, there's going to be a Corvette up there towards the top or maybe even setting the fastest lap time of the day. So for that reason alone, I really started to appreciate Corvette and what Chevrolet was able to do with this platform. And I was drawn to some of the earlier years of the C5 and C6 generation over the newer C7 and C8s. The C7 and C8s are amazing cars. I'm sure they're even faster than these C6s on the track, but for what I was looking for and what I'm currently looking for, the C6 kind of checked all the boxes. I've made other videos previously about why the C6 Z06 specifically checked all my boxes for what I was currently looking for in a Corvette. The whole moral of the story is, if you grew up not really looking at Corvette as an option, I highly suggest you check them out. C5, C6, C7, C8s, all great Corvettes, definitely worth looking into and considering for your next car. So as the sun starts to set, thanks so much for hanging out for another video. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. Let me know your feedback. Did you guys grow up in an area that had a preference for a certain style of car? Was Corvette that style of car? If so, I think you guys were lucky because you got educated way earlier than I did on how special these cars are. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you guys in the next video.